Hello and welcome to Back to the Science. I'm Dr. Susan Oliver and I'm a scientist, and this is Cindy Oliver and she's a dog. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Jonathan Howard, who is a psychiatrist and neurologist at Bellevue Hospital. Those of you who have been watching my channel for a while will recognise Jonathan from when he was here talking about his book, We Want Them Infected. But now things haven't really got any better in America, where we're glad, Cindy and I are glad that we are not there. And so this has really prompted Jonathan to, actually, he might not have prompted him to do that. He will tell me what's prompted him to do it. But Jonathan has now written a new book called Everyone Else Is Lying to You. So, Jonathan, welcome.
Thanks
And
so much for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances.
I wish it was too. And I got carried away and said what prompted you to write your book, which was not necessarily true. So, would you like to tell us what did actually prompt you to write your book?
Yeah, well, I wrote a lot of it before we knew the election results, so I wasn't sure how things were going to pan
Yeah.
out. And what's interesting is had the election gone the other way, my book would have been dismissed as hysterical fear-mongering about how bad things might have been, when in
Mm,
reality, I underestimated the threat. Although I was
mm,
fortunately able to hand in the final version of the book at the very beginning of June of this year. So I've written the first, history of the Kennedy era, at least the first 3 or 4 months. But
mm,
what inspired me was this, that COVID killed 1.2 million Americans. It was the greatest mass death event in American history. And a vaccine is not perfect, but it saved, millions of lives around the world. And hundreds of thousands of Americans died or suffered because they refused a vaccine. But despite that, the pandemic's biggest disinformation doctors have successfully rewritten the history of the pandemic in order to elevate themselves and Kennedy into power, where they are currently taking a wrecking ball to everything. And my second book was an attempt to explain how the doctors who I discussed in We Want Them Infected have risen to power as the head of the National Institute of Health here, or the head of the FDA here, or the head of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, the ACIP here. Like, how did this happen? These guys who made so many false claims and who's had this plan of herd immunity through mass infection. How did they elevate Kennedy, this massive, awful crank, into power?
and how did they do that?
That's a 600-page book. So there was a massive propaganda campaign to convince people that had we only let COVID rip and just managed to somehow magically protect older people in nursing homes, everything would have been just fine. Schools would have been open, no one would have died, the virus would have gone away. And so these doctors leveraged anger over COVID. There's some legitimate grievances. I'm not here to deny that, but they manufactured this rage about COVID to elevate themselves into power. And they were aided by a complicit media. So a lot of my book talks about the right-wing media, of course, Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, but also the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Atlantic. And they were aided by cowardly institutions who said nothing when they made blatant errors. And let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about, because I'm not talking about, nuanced ways of how we could have better handled the pandemic. I'm talking about things like doctors who said that we had herd immunity to COVID in May 2021, right before the Delta wave ripped through the American South. Doctors who discussed vaccine side effects, rare, temporary, for the most part, vaccine side effects, as a fate worse than death from COVID. Doctors who said that one COVID infection led to permanent immunity. Doctors who made basic errors, for example, saying that the flu killed more children than COVID at a time when the flu had killed 10 children and COVID had killed about 1,000. So I'm talking about these blatant mistakes and errors, and their university leadership looked the other way or promoted them. It was just, expressed as, thinking differently and heterodox thinking. And these guys were masters of manipulation. So a lot of their COVID rhetoric was, very emotionally manipulative. And
Mm.
they succeeded in enraging their audience. And again, that's how they brought themselves to power today. And that's where the title of the book comes from. You may have heard the expression, I don't know if it's true or not, of cults, but everyone else is lying. They say the first thing a cult does is tell you that everyone else is lying to
Yes.
you. And that's what they did. And they made no secret about this. They made videos, such as Dr. Vinay Prasad made videos saying, stop trusting public health. And he said, the CDC and the FDA are lying to you. And they applauded a year ago at this time not just Robert Kennedy Jr., but they anticipated these purges that we're seeing today. So none of this was hidden. This this was all out in the open. Yeah, I've uncovered exactly zero secrets in my books. I'm just a collector. I'm just a curator. 25 pages of We Want Them Infected were just nothing more than doctors declaring the pandemic basically over, starting in April 2020. And this book is really no different, just pages of these doctors trying to spread doubt and mistrust. And none of this is new. This is the playbook that's been used by the tobacco industry, by the fossil fuel industry, by the anti-GMO industry, by the climate denial industry. This has been written about before in the classic book Merchants of Doubt, for example. So this is really Merchants of Doubt 2.0. How did this happen?
Yes, and I've got to say, sitting in Australia, we really, really don't understand how these people got into power, how they've been allowed to basically take over the FDA and the CDC. And even funny, I ran into one of my neighbours yesterday who just happens to also be a doctor. I won't say what specialty. Um, but I just happened to tell him that I was going to be interviewing you. And he sort of made a funny comment, which is actually true, is that at the moment, I can't travel to the US because, not because of interviewing you, Jonathan, don't feel guilty, but just because of my social media presence, which has a lot of videos which do happen to critique various things that, people who are now in power have said that I could be stopped at the border and they could actually refuse me entry if I wanted to go to the USA, which I actually don't at the moment. But hopefully one day I will be able to go back because there are some great ski resorts in the US. But yeah, it is quite
Yeah, it's a very
it's
it's
like another world. It's just unbelievable. It's a constant topic of conversation down at the dog park is what's going on in America, and we just can't believe it. And not even obviously my interest is more the science side, but it's not even just the science side. It's just everything. And I guess why do we need someone like you to write a book about it? Why isn't the media up in arms about this? That's what I don't really understand.
Yeah, so it's a very scary and disorienting time, and I'll sort of get
Mm.
back to how what's happening in medicine is linked to everything else. Like it's all part of the
Yes.
same story. It's not
Mm.
distinct from what's happening with the rule of law and immigrants and this sort of thing. But yeah, so first of all, there are a lot of doctors who did what I did, calling out disinformation, and a lot of
Yeah.
non-doctors, right?
Yes.
In different ways, in different formats. I suppose I'm the one who collected things the best, but it wasn't just me. There were a lot of other people.
Yeah.
The one problem is we were sort of a ragtag group of people who did this on our own time without support from our universities. Not that I'm looking for a giant pat on the back, but we
Mm.
were up against extremely well-funded right-wing forces. And journalist Walker Bragman, whose articles are quoted throughout my second book. I mean, often the entire article is just reprinted because it's that good and that's valuable. Has
Mm,
done amazing investigative journalism to try to uncover these sort of right-wing networks.
mm.
And I think medicine was caught flat-footed. Again, had the election gone the other way, I would have been dismissed as this hysterical, raving lunatic warning about things
Yes,
that didn't happen.
yes.
So I think, we were just caught off guard, and there's this culture that criticizing other doctors is somehow kind of inappropriate or something like that. The
Mm,
entire conclusion to my book is about the former dean of Harvard, a man by the name of Jeffrey Flyer, who amplified Vinay Prasad's disinformation and berated
mm,
me for correcting it. And when RFK was announced, he said, I can't believe it. It's shocking that this is happening. But the signs were there, and Vinay Prasad was writing these very pro RFK articles. So the former dean of Harvard was amplifying Vinay Prasad, who was gushing over RFK. He was dunking on
mm,
me as I was warning about RFK. Don't feel bad for
mm.
me. I'm okay. But he was dunking on our messages, and now he's just sort of shocked. He said, I can't believe this. And he's trying to defend, he's doing the best he can at the moment in 2025, but just
Yeah.
after ignoring the warnings for 2024. So there was this sense that it can't happen here. It's as if, as if there'd be two moons tomorrow. It's just this unthinkable thing kind of happened. And just to get back to the point about what's happening in medicine not being distinct from what's happening elsewhere, there was a video clip the other day, I mean, just yesterday maybe, of Donald Trump spewing his nonsense about how things are out of control in Portland, Oregon, this very peaceful city. Uh, uh, I've never been there, but suppose it has this
Mm,
reputation as this very weird and kind of artsy city, and it's living up to that
mm,
reputation now. But Donald Trump is depicting it as a war zone. And he might actually believe that. I mean, he might actually be seeing AI videos and believing those are real, or videos from, there were some protests there in 2019 or 2020, and some buildings got burned down, and he thinks the whole city is a war zone. And he's, discussed deploying the military there, and he's, doing similar things in Chicago, and ICE is running rampant. Anyways, to circle back to my point, during one of his latest rants about Portland, behind him were standing Robert Kennedy Jr., Dr. Oz, the head of CMS, which I forget exactly what that stands for, but like Medicare, Medicaid services. And behind also was Dr. Marty McCary, the head of the FDA.
mm,
The point is that a Harvard trained, excuse me, a surgeon from Columbia University, Dr. Oz, one of our top universities, and another surgeon from Johns Hopkins, again, these legendary places,
mm.
were there in the background smiling and nodding as Donald Trump is falsely saying that Portland is on fire and using that as a pretext, possibly to send troops and to let, again, ICE, immigration, customs agents, just kind of run wild, and some of these horrible things that we're seeing on social media. So what's happening in medicine is not disconnected from what's happening throughout this country. And these doctors are unfortunately lending the legitimacy of the medical profession to that by standing in the background and nodding
Mm.
along or saying nothing. When if it was me, maybe I wouldn't do so in the moment, but I would have handed my resignation and say, Donald Trump, you're trying to ignite a civil war, right? I mean, and you're
Yes.
trying to destroy democracy in this country.
Mm.
And these doctors are praising Trump today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, previous regimes, there's always been doctors kind of playing a role, I suppose, and ours is no different.
Yeah. And speaking, you said like you would have handed in your resignation. We know that a lot of doctors and scientists have handed in their
Mhm.
resignations since the new regime. So, is there a concern that there's going to be like this? I guess scientific research in general is going to be suffering a lot because of what's happening. I know when I go on to PubMed at the moment, there's a warning telling me that because of funding cuts, you can't trust. I was say, I think, was it saying? I think because of funding cuts, they can't keep the site updated or
Well,
something,
that's probably
something
because of the
like that.
government shutdown, which is another problem
Oh, that's something
altogether.
else, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the Republicans and Democrats can't get together to fund the country, so there's a shutdown right now.
Yeah.
So that one isn't necessarily, the
Oh,
fault
okay.
of these doctors, but yeah, I mean, there have been mass purges at the National Institute of Health, at the Food and Drug
Mm,
Administration, at the CDC. Some of these were just reversed. I mean, it seems chaos, right? It's kind of like the
yes.
Keystone Cops. And, another way, you asked, how did this happen? Is in both books, I kind of discussed this concept of the real world, like what actually
Mm,
happened in the hospital where I worked, what actually happened in schools, and then the mirror world or the imaginary world. And this was the pandemic as envisioned in the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal and on Fox
yeah.
News and on social media. And there's an entire chapter in the next book, which explains that the doctors who I discuss and We Want Them Infected, they got famous based entirely on these hypothetical accomplishments, right? They claim
Mm,
that they would have protected the vulnerable. They claim they would have opened schools. And they made it all sound so easy and they patted themselves on the back. We argued that schools should be open. We proposed that vulnerable people should be protected, as if all it took was just to propose and just to argue things. So they essentially erased the virus and declared themselves more powerful than the virus. But we're seeing now that they're in charge again. It's like the Keystone Cops. The current head of the ACIP, who I referenced before, Dr. Martin Kulldorff, claimed that he could have ended the pandemic in 3 to 6 months. He got famous.
impressive.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's amazing what he said he would have done. He was one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, which I talked about a ton
Ah,
in We Want Them
mm,
Infected. And they claimed that the mass infection of unvaccinated youth in October 2020 would have ended the pandemic in 3 to 6 months. But fast forward to today, he can't even run a single meeting of the ACIP. It was a disaster. People didn't know what they were voting on. um, he had a quote, "We are rookies." By the way, that's going to be the title of my third book, "We Are Rookies."
oh, we are rookies. I
Yeah.
love it.
Um, at the NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is not doing any better. He was also one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, who, boasted of all these accomplishments that were just incredible and wonderful, but also completely imaginary, things that he would have done, and things that he called on other people to do. And now that he's head of the NIH, he seems out of his depth. He seems incompetent. He seems very, despised by a lot of the people who work there. And he seems to want to return to the glory days of 2020 when he was out of power and he could make podcasts and make YouTube videos, again, saying what he would have done to spread doubt and mistrust about people who actually had real world responsibility, because he made it seem as if everything was a choice, as
Mm,
if closing schools was a choice and the virus had no say in the matter.
yeah.
Although, when he and Martin Kulldorff helped run the show in Florida in the summer of 2021, the virus closed schools. The virus killed seniors in record numbers. The virus killed teachers. So they didn't do a single thing that they claimed that they would have done, but they got famous by these hypothetical accomplishments. A lot of very prominent professors and pundits, gave them credit for proposing things, for arguing for things. As if I say, I am arguing for an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia. I am arguing for world peace. Great.
Mm.
I don't deserve a Nobel Prize for that, do I? Um,
Speaking of which,
yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Mm.
So
So,
I was just going to say, I hope what's happening here, and I'm sure it is is serving as a warning for the rest of the world about what happens when quackery and pseudoscience go
Mm,
uncontested. That, science doesn't defend itself. And if medicine sort of acts like we're above it all and we should never ever discuss politics, bad faith actors are going to take advantage of that. I mean, that's what happened here. They took advantage of medicine's reticence and hesitancy to, get dirty, and get in the mud.
yeah,
So
yes. Well, you'll be happy to know that, or maybe happy might not be the right word, but every time some misinformation is on the news in the US, we then have our authorities actually having to put out the truth. So with all the recent nonsense regarding, we call it paracetamol here, you
yeah,
call it acetaminophen, is that what you call it? Yeah,
Tylenol.
Tylenol, yeah. So when all that nonsense came out, our regulatory authority literally had to put out a press release explaining what the actual data said so that people in Australia wouldn't be concerned. And I believe, well, I know the same thing happened in the UK, and I'm sure the same thing has happened in many other countries. So, yeah, you guys are really making a lot of work for people in other countries inadvertently.
Yeah, no, and listen, I apologize. I mean, I used to sort of get mad at the UK for exporting Andrew Wakefield, for example,
Oh,
who, by the way,
yes.
is taking victory laps right now. He's very happy because
Yes.
Donald Trump suggested splitting up the MMR, as he proposed many years ago.
Yes.
But what's happening here in the United States is almost a public health secession.
Yes.
So multiple states are banding together in the Northeast and in the West to
Mm,
sort of essentially ignore the federal government, to say that our Center for Disease Control is now irrelevant. And same with a lot of
mm,
professional organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics and American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So they are taking the appropriate steps to essentially say to these guys, to our current medical establishment, you're irrelevant. Go ahead, you have official power, but we're gonna ignore it. And that's, I guess, one nice thing about the United States is federalism. We have all these kind of 50 states as kind of a
mm,
last stand against a tyrannical federal government or incompetent federal government. But it's not a
yeah.
good thing. It's not a
It's
good
not a
thing.
good thing, especially if you're not living in one of the right states. You sort of
Yeah.
have to move. And I do believe, I think I may have heard it mentioned on one of your podcasts. I think was it Wendy's children who said they're actually looking to move so that they're not
Yeah,
they're
out
not
of DC, out of
affected.
Washington, DC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's just
yeah.
very sad. Now, one other thing we should mention, given that this interview is going to be on YouTube, you've had some interesting interactions with YouTube recently, haven't you? Would you like to
Yeah,
tell us about them?
yeah. So I was a mini celebrity for one weekend. So I got it back. It has a happy ending, this story.
Yes.
A very, very small YouTube channel. It had about
Yeah.
250 videos, and I appeared in about five of them. And so
Yeah.
it really wasn't my YouTube. I mean, it was my YouTube channel, but it really wasn't me. What it was is collections of videos of our current medical establishment, Dr. Marty McCary saying we had herd immunity in May 2021, or Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the head of the NIH, saying herd immunity was inevitable and, COVID and reinfections are rare, or Dr. Vinay Prasad, saying wonderful things about RFK Jr. and Trump. And again, that my YouTube channel had about 250 followers. I never promoted it, but I used those articles in I used those videos a lot in my science-based medicine articles because they're irrefutable proof, right? It's a way to be entirely fair to people, to be like, here's a 2-minute clip of Dr. Marty McCary on Fox News saying COVID infections lead to permanent immunity, this sort of thing. Anyways, and I got a notice probably a month ago that Dr. Vinay Prasad had filed a copyright claim against me, something like this. And so YouTube had my channel shut down. And my videos were, there were several long clips of just what he had said. And I would give them my own titles to try to illustrate some of the hypocrisy that you're about to see. And so YouTube took my channel down. I do not think Dr. Prasad, who, by the way, is not the #1 guy at the FDA, but probably the #2 guy at our Food and Drug Administration. So he's a public
Mm.
official now. And he is
Yes.
spending his time trying to get YouTube videos taken down from a channel with 250 followers. So,
Mm.
anyways, so he got my YouTube channel taken down. I posted about it, and a bunch of journalists actually became very interested in it. So it was written up in The Guardian. It was written up in Reason magazine, which has spread a ton of disinformation, including elevating Vinay Prasad. There's an
Mm.
organization here called FIRE, which is usually, well, I forget what they
Oh
stand for.
yes, I'm familiar with them actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
about not related to vaccines at all,
No, no, no.
related
It's a
to
free speech organization,
yeah,
but they
yeah.
put out a long post, defending me, and especially because Vinay Prasad, and as all of these guys did, spent most of the pandemic centering themselves and saying that they were censored and silenced because
Mm.
YouTube took down one of their videos, or Vinay Prasad had his speech canceled, and this is the greatest catastrophe in the history of free speech. I mean, they spoke. I mean,
Mm.
sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm actually
But no, you're not.
no, I'm not. I'm not. So
You
it's
would have
kind of
you would have had the videos to prove that you weren't exaggerating, but
yeah.
hang on. Yeah.
No, no, there's one of my videos actually is of Jay Bhattacharya in the spring of 2024 speaking at a rally for Robert Kennedy Jr. back when he was
Mm.
running for president. He was speaking in front of a crowd of, a couple thousand people into a microphone about how he had been silenced. It was the most ironic
Mm.
thing. Anyways, so a First Amendment lawyer, a couple actually contacted me, and some of these guys work for free. And so they had me craft a notice to YouTube. And essentially, YouTube gave Vinay Prasad 10 days to show that he had taken legal action against me, and he had not. And so my YouTube channel was restored. I will just a couple other points. First of all, when Vinay Prasad was asked by the media to put out a statement, he lied about me. He said that I was just doing this
Fancy that.
grifting. I was grifting, that I was doing this for personal profit, when in fact, I'd made $0 from my YouTube account.
Mm.
There were, again, 250
Yeah.
followers. An
Yeah, you
average
need
video,
1,000. Yeah.
yeah, right, right. An
Yeah.
average video got 10 views. You need 1,000. Um, and he had monetized his social media content.
Mm.
And so, I mean, let's be clear about what happened here is that a government doctor told a blatant lie in the press about me, a private citizen, merely because I was using his own words to explain why I disagreed with them.
Mm.
I will also say that I've been a little disappointed that the fate of my YouTube channel got more attention than the contents of my YouTube channel, because I think all of these organizations that wrote about the fate of my YouTube channel should have paid more attention to its content, because again, these were just these horrifying videos of our medical establishment saying the craziest, wrongest, most outlandish stuff. And if people had cared about this in 2020 and 21 and 2022, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation today. So, I kind of responded by making this 4 hour long documentary, which is just me kind of going through all of these, not all of these videos, but a sample of the videos to really sort of tell the story of my book, to sort of say, here's an example of, I don't know, what's one of the chapters, for example, just to reference what we said before, videos of Jay Bhattacharya saying all the wonderful things that he proposed, not the wonderful things he did, because he was a
Mm.
content creator with
Yes.
regard to COVID. What he actually did is made podcasts and YouTube videos anyways, but it showed all of
Mm.
these videos in their original form. Or to circle back to we want them infected, it showed clips from these doctors in 2020 saying the best way to get herd immunity is through natural immunity. So Scott Atlas saying that, who advised President Trump, because if you listen to these guys in 2025, they'll say, we just wanted poor kids in school. That's all that we cared about. Poor minority children
Yeah.
suffered learning loss and education. So it showed video clips of these. So anyway, so there's like a 4 hour long documentary in 20 different chapters or so. Currently, it's on Rumble, which is a
Oh,
far right wing,
yes,
disinformation.
I am familiar with Rumble. Unfortunately, I won't be putting a link to your Rumble video. YouTube wouldn't like that at all.
No,
But
I
then
no.
again, maybe you should be, maybe now that because your channel has now been restored. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I got to
So,
upload my 4 hour long documentary to YouTube. I've had a couple days. I've just been lazy about it,
okay.
that's in the works because it is important actually to watch these videos because it communicates the affect. They starred in a lot of kind of propaganda documentaries. So there's a video
Mm.
of Jay Bhattacharya, uh, talking about lockdowns and this biomedical security state, and there are police in the streets. Actually, exactly like there are police in the streets today.
Yeah, it's almost like they predicted what was going to happen in the future, but they just got a few of the details a little bit wrong.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's that's what I'm writing about is how they used this rage and anger that they generated in fear about COVID mitigation measures, that it was going to bring about the next Hitler, for example, that it was, just this totalitarian overreach to
Mm.
elevate themselves and to elevate Trump into power. I honestly think that they were, I mean, we'll never know, but that they were the merging of Maha Kennedy with Trump was a very, very pivotal moment in the election, and it may have helped, Trump, you know, win a second time. We'll never know about this, but I think that
Yeah,
they played a significant role, and that'll be, along with their COVID disinformation, the only thing that will ever
yeah.
matter about them. That they elevated Kennedy, they elevated Trump, and we still have over 3 years to go.
And one of the things that I thought I saw the other day, which I thought was quite amusing, is that Donald Trump is letting Kennedy have his way and make all these crazy, crazy statements, change availability of vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. But he recently got his COVID vaccine and his flu vaccine. So,
Well, here's my conspiracy prediction. Ready? That Trump is going to suffer a major medical event in the next month, and everyone will say that it's because he got the COVID and the flu vaccines. Okay, so you
mhm.
you you heard it here first.
Goodness.
Imagine JD Vance, or vice president, was trying to poison him or something like that.
Yeah,
That's what he would do. No, but
yeah,
you're right. Yeah, that Trump, got his updated COVID shot, as I think everyone should. There's no reason not to.
Mm.
The risks are a sore arm.
I guess the reason not to is because they're not that easy to get hold of anymore, are they? I've heard it's
It depends
that
where you are. This is
oh, it
what I'm
depends where
talking about.
you are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is what I'm talking about, the fracturing of the federal health, infrastructure. Is it's kind of now every state or every couple of states for themselves. So it's a
yeah.
very bad thing. But one thing that our current medical establishment did, another technique of theirs to spread doubt,
Mm.
was to say that, not every COVID mitigation measure has been studied by a randomized controlled trial. So the formal term for this is methodolatry, where they will essentially say, you know, everything you're saying is false unless you can demonstrate it by a randomized controlled trial, and then they would say for every COVID variant and every sub-demographic groups. But now that these guys are in power, they failed to do the randomized controlled trials that would justify their president taking this COVID shot. Uh,
Terrible.
Again,
And given
I don't think randomized controlled trials are needed. I think Trump made
no.
the right decision. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and haven't they suddenly recommended some supposed new treatment for autism that has really No randomized controlled trial and very little evidence at the moment.
Yeah, so they are pushing leucovorin, which I think is
Yep.
basically folic acid, as a cure for autism. I haven't read the studies myself. I've read about them, and they're
Mm.
all, very small. I think
Yep.
the largest one maybe had 80 people. One of the lead
Mm.
researchers had one of his other studies shut down due to data, problems. So it's this, very kind of dirty thing where there's not any real evidence for it.
Mm.
But yeah, no, Dr. Marty McCary is going on the news and he is justifying its use by, quote, incredible stories from doctors. That is what he is using. But when it comes to vaccines, he will say, we need more randomized controlled trials. We
Yeah.
need fresh data. The original trials were done in 2020 when the world was a totally different place, which he's right about. But
Mm.
just this idea that you need to start from scratch with a randomized
Yeah.
controlled trial for every
Yeah.
variant. It's
Mm.
as if we know
Yeah.
nothing. It's
Yeah.
absurd.
Because I don't recall that we do that for the yearly flu shot, do we? Which changes every year.
No, because you can't, because by the time you
Yeah.
test it, it would become obsolete. So it's not
Mm.
as if again, they portrayed, to go back to this theme, they portrayed the failure of the previous administration to do all of these randomized controlled trials as a choice.
Mm.
And they patted themselves on the back because they told their predecessors what to do. But now that they have power, suddenly you don't need RCTs anymore. There's this new Maha buzz phrase, gold standard science and common sense, and they all repeat that in unison. But what it's come to mean is we can do whatever we want.
Mm.
We can do things based on vibes alone. For leucovorin, incredible stories. Our Dr. Marty McCary has given many interviews where he says he personally knows of people who have died from the COVID vaccine. So he's talking about stories that he heard from his friends or his
Mm.
neighbors. My grandpa got the COVID vaccine and died 2 weeks later of a heart attack. Dr. McCary is counting that as evidence.
Mm.
So it's really what I call feelings-based medicine or vibes-based
Yes.
medicine. And, we're just seeing, standards degraded. And it's a real tragedy, all by, men who, and they're all men, with maybe one exception, who claim to, value data and evidence and science and evidence-based medicine. We would
Mm.
all echo that same language. Although some things have taken a mystical turn here in the United States. I don't know if you're aware of, I'm sure you are, Joseph Ladapo, the Surgeon
Oh,
General.
yes, of course I am.
Yeah, yeah, I knew you would be. But for everyone else, he is the Surgeon General of Florida, and
Mm.
he is a very problematic character. Seems to have lied about some of his COVID work, and he was hired by Ron DeSantis in the summer of 2021 and doesn't really seem to show up to work. No one is really clear what he does all day. There have been some great articles about him in the University of Florida student newspaper, so student reporters have broken a lot of these stories. But just recently, and actually he's talked this way before, that a lot of his beliefs about vaccines are gleaned from his wife, who's having these sort of mystical experiences. So he has called the COVID vaccines the Antichrist, for example. And I think he means that kind of literally. He's not speaking
Mm.
metaphorically. So there has been this sort of blending of traditional academic evidence-based medicine, with the rankest quackery you can possibly imagine. I mean,
Mm.
RFK doesn't even believe in germ theory, it seems. And when we were having measles kill children in Texas, he was spreading blatant lies about the measles vaccine, and they seem
Mm.
poised to come for all vaccines. I'm surprised actually they haven't come after the HPV vaccine. That would have been my prediction as the first one that they were going to come after. But fortunately, I've been wrong about
Yes.
that.
Yes, very, very fortunate because I mean that is just making such a difference around the world, isn't it, to cervical cancer rates? Just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, from what
Yeah.
I'm reading, cervical cancer will be a thing of the past, and
Yeah.
other head and neck cancers too, HPV related cancers. So
Mm.
It's a true miracle of modern medicine. But who knows? That's probably on the chopping block. Like I said, we have
Mm.
another three years to go.
Okay, so Jonathan, where can people get your book?
Well, it's on Amazon,
Mhm.
but probably the best place is direct, especially if you're in the United States, is from the publisher, Red Hawk Publishing.
Mhm.
So you can go there. I mean, it's a small kind of mighty publishing firm, and uh, so don't be intimidated by the size of the book. I mean, it's half 50% a reference book and 50% meant to be read one chapter after another. But a lot of people have told me that both books they can only consume in small doses because it's so enraging.
They want to throw it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I get that a lot. And,
Mm.
there's no higher compliment to my work than someone saying I had to put it down and take a walk around the block for a few minutes because the quotes that I present, they're damning. It's
Mm. Absolutely.
and it is horrifying, especially because you know how it. I mean, at least to this point, we know how it ends. We know that it has
Yes.
an unhappy
Mm.
ending. And again, watch out for We Are Rookies coming into 2029. So,
Yes. Now, one more thing. When you wrote your last brilliant book, a number of my viewers actually asked if they'd be able to get it as a, I've forgotten what they're called now, a
Kindle, e-reader.
Kindle. Yeah. Will that
So it's certainly we want them infected is available as a ebook at this point.
ebook? That's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and the new one will be too. I think the publisher just wants to try to sell as many paper copies as possible.
Yeah, I think that's the standard way. So,
Yeah,
so what we will do is I will put a link to where they can get the paper-based book now in this video's description, and we will add a link to the Kindle version when it becomes available, and we'll also provide a link to your fledgling YouTube channel, and maybe you may get a few
yeah.
extra subscribers.
Thank you.
So,
And finally, sorry, I write one column, at least one column a week on science-based medicine.
yes, we'll
So,
provide a link
so
to that as well.
yeah, so there's plenty of free stuff. I can't stop writing, it turns out. Hypergraphia,
That
that's what we call it in neurology. So thank you so much for promoting all that. I
No,
really appreciate it.
thank you very much for joining us.